All right. I think we are live. Welcome to everyone who is here on Friday night. I have 3,500 tabs waiting to share with all of you today. So many good things. I have Den helping me out behind the scenes here, helping moderate comments and whatnot. So if you are trolls, we will try to our best to take care of that. And as always, if you have any questions, I'll get to them between stories. Just leave a super like. And if you want to support the show, if you want to support this YouTube channel or me in general, you can go to patreon.com/Hemant. And that is very much appreciated as well. So looking forward to getting to those questions. But I figured, I do have one more announcement I want to share with you all, which is that next Friday night, for anyone who might be interested, I am speaking in Denver. This is the Secular Hub. It's a place in Denver. I am going to leave a link to this in the YouTube comments. And Den, if you want to post that link in the YouTube section in the comments as well, just so we could see that, I would appreciate it. But basically, I will be in Denver, Colorado next Saturday night. And I think there's a fundraising dinner on Friday night. But if any of you are in or near the Denver area, it would be cool to see you in person. I'll be giving a talk about why organized atheism doesn't suck and why it's useful. And I hope you will be there to participate. It would be great. I do think you need to get tickets in advance because there are limited numbers. So you'll take care of that with the link over there. And with that, let me get rid of this banner over here and let's start with a story that just brought a smile to my face because it involves our friend Gregory Locke. And I'm going to play a clip for you in a second here. But the thing that you need to know about this is that, whenever you have a church that has a lot of people coming and going, like on a Sunday morning, at some point, if it's a lot of people who are coming, you may need to hire the local police to help navigate things, to usher cars, to help take care of, road traffic and things like that. And when you live in rural Tennessee, like this Christian pastor Greg Locke does, well, then the roads are a lot harder to navigate as is. So when you have a lot of cars coming in, you're going to need more officers to help out with that. Well, it turns out at the beginning of this month, over Labor Day weekend, Greg Locke had what he called a National Deliverance Training Conference, which is a very fancy way of saying he wanted to help you get rid of the devil. It's like a magician's conference, but no one knows it's a trick. You know what I mean? So he held this conference. And the thing is, he has this giant circus tent in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, which is one thing for his regular Sunday crowd. But this is a conference, no matter how silly it is, and that brings in even more people. And the thing is, the officers in the area did not know that so many people were coming to the place. So they had to work immediately to say, oh crap, there's a lot of people coming to this area. We need to help. An estimated 8,000 people attended this conference over a 3-day weekend. And that means you got to manage the traffic. You got to manage the crowd. You got to do all of this stuff. And I wanted to point out that also, besides just the traffic, the road outside the circus tent he calls a church just wasn't made to house that many vehicles. You can't have that many on the road, which means the impact is going to be a lot. They had to close certain parts of the road so people could walk through to get to the circus tent. It was chaos. And here's the thing. A couple weeks ago, Greg Locke gave a sermon and he said everything was great. Huge success, great success. Everyone loved the event. The cops told him how amazing he was. It's a very Trumpian sort of speech where it's like, everyone loved me. I was there. Everyone gave me a standing ovation. And the truth is something very different. So I'm going to play for you what Greg Locke said in that sermon. And then I'm going to show you, this is a clip that was put together not by me, but by someone else. It's a clip of someone from the sheriff's office talking to a local government meeting saying, you guys, that was not, it was not a success. He's lying to you in the sermon. And also, this took up a lot of resources on our end. All right. Have fun watching this clip.
Right after the conference, the sheriff called us from Wilson County, and he was very gracious, applauding us for the flawlessness of the parking, the kindness. I mean, there were no problems. I mean, it was, to have that many people here, it was flawless.
But I have to say some things been said about the sheriff's office and me personally on the internet. There was an event down there in Labor Day. There was thousands of people down there. And it was said that I said it was a success. There wasn't no traffic problems, and that is not the case. I know Mount Jet worked very hard down there. I had up to 15 officers working their holiday weekend because of all the traffic down there. And I can say it was not a success.
I do appreciate the sound effect at the end there. It was not a success, though. Here's the thing. Greg Locke usually hires, I think he has to hire one cop to handle usual Sunday traffic flow. This time they needed, I think, 15 officers to handle the thousands of people coming in. And it led to this glorious headline. Greg Locke's Global Vision Bible Church billed $18,000 for police overtime after the conference. He's billed $18,000. That includes, if you could see it in this article, that includes Mount Juliet's police, which charged him about $11,000. You could see right over here. And then the county had to also charge him for something else that was several more $1,000s. It comes down to $18,000. So they're basically saying, hey, if you're going to use our resources or force us to use these resources, we're going to make you pay for it, because this is you. If you want to bring all these people in, you need to take care of it. You need to do your responsibility. Greg Locke insists he didn't do anything wrong. He hasn't quite said, I'm absolutely not going to pay this. I have this weird working relationship with the guy, and I reached out to him and I'm like, so when are you going to pay this bill over here? And his answer was basically, our lawyers are looking at it. I don't necessarily know what that means, but they did have another, I don't know if it was a Mount Juliet or a Wilson County meeting today, and members of his church showed up at that meeting to sing hymns and do nothing of value. But I don't think they made any decision on what they're going to do. Like, at some point here, this is not the first time the local government and Greg Locke's church have clashed over secular issues. There is a lot of noise at his church, and a lot of people who live in the community say you're violating noise ordinances, but that didn't really seem to go anywhere in terms of a battle. But again, when you're using the police resources like they are here, the cops are going to want their money. The police departments rightly say they are owed for the resources that Greg Locke took from them. By the way, on a holiday weekend, when they had to call these cops in and say, I need you to get out here because there's too many people. We need to make sure nothing crazy happens. We need to take care of the property here because it's public roads and all that stuff. So I hope the police don't back down, and I hope they don't say like, well, he's a pastor, we'll just let it go. I hope they push this and get the money they're owed. Greg Locke also has said in his most recent sermon, he just doesn't have this kind of money. It's like, buddy, you had 8,000 people come to the conference. I know you took donations. I know you have a lot of people that come every week, and they are just handing you whatever money they have. I'm sure it's not a lot for a lot of them, but overall, when you're the guy in charge, he doesn't have to show anyone his bank account, but I have to believe they have $18,000, and it's not going to put a dent in whatever it is they do. They always seem to have more money to build out their circus tent. They always seem to have money to fly Greg Locke everywhere he needs to go. He's not even there this weekend. He's flying, giving a speech somewhere. So I don't know. They have $18,000. And as a commenter is pointing out here, I think I'm with the cops on this one. I know. I am too on this one. Like, they didn't do anything wrong. The cops did what they were supposed to do. And Greg Locke is acting like none of this is all out of his hands. He didn't do anything wrong. So we'll see if that leads anywhere. If he tries to fight it, I'm very curious to see where that ends up going, because that could be a very interesting story. And I don't think it'll end well for Greg Locke if it comes down to that. I will get to this. I do want to get to this story. I'm just checking out to see if there are any comments here. Was this the guy shouting about witches? Yes. Greg Locke is the guy who said, I'm going to go after witches in my church, and then insisted he had found the witches and stuff. And of course, no, he just made all that up. What was the comment here, Den, that I was supposed to? It's a drop in the bucket compared to the taxes his church is not paying. I mean, that's the point, right? He's not paying taxes. He's taking in all this money, and because it's a church, they don't have to tell anyone how much they're taking in, where it's going. That's the benefit of being a church. But the idea that he can't pay the cops for an event that, I mean, they have a formula behind how many cops we need for this. You're supposed to work it out with them ahead of time. That's what a responsible church would do. Locke clearly didn't do any of that. So we'll see where that goes. And yeah, he's making you root for the cops, isn't he? Let me jump to this crazy story involving Tim Ballard. And I will admit, I did not watch The Sound of Freedom. I didn't see that movie over the summer. For what it's worth, I haven't seen Barbie or Oppenheimer either. I'll get around to it. I don't do movies. But one of the biggest non-Barbenheimer movies of the summer was The Sound of Freedom. And this is a movie in which Jim Caviezel, the guy who played Jesus in Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel plays a guy named Tim Ballard, whose mission it is to save children from Colombian sex traffickers. Tim Ballard is a real dude, so this is one of those based on a true story movies. And in the movie, basically, the way this movie goes down, from what I've read, is that Tim Ballard is a U.S. government agent who goes after these child predators. And that's a wonderful thing. I'm glad he's going after them, right? The problem in the movie is no matter how many guys he arrests, the problem never seems to dissipate. So eventually he's like, why am I going after the bad guys when I need to get to the root of the problem? So Tim Ballard, the main character in the movie, he wants to save the children directly. And the government's like, you can't do that. That's not your job here. And so he's like, well, then I quit. And then he just goes to Colombia to try to rescue children by himself. And even when his own life is in danger, he's there trying to protect the kids. That's the idea. So right-wing conspiracy theorists have totally latched onto this film, partly because I think they think everybody is a sex predator who are going after children. And if you're a Democrat, that's very true. And if you're some liberal, that's probably true. You know how that works? And also, Tim Ballard in real life and Jim Caviezel, the actor playing him in real life, they're both conspiracy theorists who align with like the Fox News Newsmax crowd. Both men have promoted QAnon conspiracies. They claim Democrats are involved in the kidnapping and selling of kids. At one point, they said like they're harvesting the blood of children to consume as an elixir of youth. That's the sort of BS these guys believe in. But here's the thing. Just because these guys are kind of crazy on their own, if the movie was good, maybe that would explain how successful it is, maybe, because Hollywood always takes liberties with these based on a true story movies. And if it's a good story, I could see how that could be successful on its own. But the what has come out since the movie has been out is that they took a lot of liberties with this movie. They overlooked a lot of facts about Tim Ballard. So here's what you should know about it. The truth is, Tim Ballard founded a nonprofit anti-trafficking group called Operation Underground Railroad. Like an horrible name, by the way. Why are you taking that name? But their whole group's claim is that we conduct paramilitary missions to rescue children. And according to the group, Since 2013, they have emancipated over 6,000 women and children, and Ballard himself participated in some of those missions. So that's the story the group has been telling for several years. But shortly after the film's release, Vice, that news outlet, basically said the movie's they're glossing over OUR's long history of exaggeration and misrepresentation. And they had a couple of examples here that I'll tell you about. One of them is that OUR took credit for rescuing a girl named Liliana. But according to their reporting, the girl rescued herself and never interacted with people from OUR until years later. So, like, why are they taking credit for her? They also claimed working collaborations with groups. Those collaborations did not exist. Some of their actions, critics have said, may have made the trafficking problem worse. And they also reported their number of reported successes. A lot of experts in the field say those are exaggerated as well. So all of that we have known for months now, if you followed this story, that the movie depicts Tim Ballard and OUR as these amazing people in this amazing group. And the reality of the group is that even if you think its mission is on the right track, the facts of the matter are very much exaggerated, if not problematic. And then recently, like this week, I'm going to show you this here. Vice came out with another report. This time they pointed out that Tim Ballard left the organization earlier this year. And you might have thought, oh, it's because the movie's coming out. He has other things to do. He has people he's going to talk to. He's going to capitalize on his fame. Well, according to the Vice article, nope, that's not the reason he left. Tim Ballard's departure from Operation Underground Railroad followed a sexual misconduct investigation. According to that article, Tim Ballard, when he was on mission in places like Colombia, he invited women to act as his wife on undercover overseas missions, ostensibly aimed at rescuing victims of sex trafficking. He would then allegedly coerce those women into sharing a bed or showering together, claiming that it was necessary to fool traffickers, which is wild because that suggests these people are lurking in his shower. They have spy cameras looking into his house. I don't know. Ballard, Vice said, is said to have sent at least one woman a photo of himself in his underwear, festooned with fake tattoos, and to have asked another how far she was willing to go to save children. That's according to a source. So that was a problem that happened this week. And it's like, okay, allegation, sure. This is not a criminal thing just yet. But if those allegations are true, that would certainly explain why he ran the hell out of that organization or why they got rid of him or whatever it was. So that is definitely messed up. But the reason I wanted to talk about it specifically is because of another headline that came out this week, which involved the Mormon Church, which I didn't know was part of this movie. But apparently, here you go. Here's this headline. The Mormon Church denounces Tim Ballard's morally unacceptable activities. It's like, one, for the Mormon Church to go after one dude, I mean, that's kind of, for someone who, by the way, still claims to be a Mormon, I've never seen that happen. They're going after one of their own. That's wild. But also, is the Mormon Church really on the moral high ground here? To call out someone else's actions? That seems weird as well. So what is going on there? And that story in itself is also pretty strange. So let me try to explain this as best I can. Apparently, when Tim Ballard in real life was giving speeches about this amazing work he does, he often invoked the name of one of the leaders of the Mormon Church. That leader is a 94-year-old dude named Russell Ballard. And I know they have the same last name. Don't be confused. They are not related. But Russell Ballard's official title is the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Hell of a business card. That's a long way of saying he's just a high-ranking Mormon leader. Now, here's the thing. They do know each other. They have talked with each other. They have praised the work of each other in the past. But apparently, Tim Ballard, the dude in the movie, he said the Mormon guy was in close contact with him during rescue operations And they also worked together closely on a for-profit venture capitalizing on Tim Ballard's fame. And that is what the Mormon Church, in the wake of those sexual abuse allegations, that's kind of what they're now responding to, because they're basically saying, no, 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 we have nothing to do with this guy whatsoever. Check out this statement from the Mormon Church here. Uh, I'll zoom in here so you can see this. President Ballard and Tim Ballard, no relation, established a friendship a number of years ago. That friendship was built on a shared interest in looking after God's children wherever they are and without regard to their circumstance. However, that relationship is in the past. For many months, President Ballard has had no contact with the founder of OUR. The nature of that relationship was always in support of vulnerable children being abused, trafficked, and otherwise neglected. Once it became clear Tim Ballard had betrayed their friendship through the unauthorized use of President Ballard's name for Tim Ballard's personal advantage and activity regarded as morally unacceptable. Notice they don't say what they're talking about there. What exactly was morally unacceptable? President Ballard withdrew his association. He never authorized his name or the name of the church to be used for Tim's personal or financial interests. Like, what on earth is the church talking about that Tim Ballard did wrong? Were they talking about the alleged abuse, the sexual abuse with the women? Were they talking about something else? It's weird that they just said this guy's morally unacceptable without going into details about that. But also, they just want to make it very clear they got nothing to do with the Sound of Freedom guy. Like, they're running the hell away from this dude. And also, they pointed out, I think, someone who worked with Tim Ballard said one of the reasons Tim Ballard wanted to connect himself to the higher up in the Mormon Church is basically to use his organization, the sex trafficking group, to lead people to Mormonism. Like, he thought he was on a mission to convert people to his religion. And the fact that the Mormon Church still wants nothing to do with the guy, I mean, that should tell you how whatever this guy did, Tim Ballard, is bad. Because even the Mormon Church is like, oh, he was recruiting for us? Yeah, no, don't care. Oh, he has one of the biggest movies in the summer that could totally recruit people for our cause. Still want nothing to do with him. Tim Ballard, by the way, has reacted to the Mormon Church's statement by first saying the Mormon Church didn't really write that. Which, because he's basically saying, look, it appeared in Vice. What is Vice? Why would you believe anything in that outlet? Except the Mormon Church also sent the same statement to like local news outlets around Salt Lake City. Like, there's a news station that said, yeah, we got the memo too. So it's not a fake statement. The Mormon Church released that. Tim Ballard is also saying that the people who work for Vice must be pedophiles or adjacent to that. Like, just he's making up lies at this point. He's really trying to shoot down any claim that the Mormon Church wants nothing to do with him. He is trying to shove away any allegations of sexual abuse. And it's not just because his career now, not just the movie's success, which I don't think he gets paid for that, but his speaking career and his fame is definitely going to financially benefit if the movie does well. So he wants to capitalize on that. But one reason he wants to make sure his name is not tarnished is because you may have heard this week that Mitt Romney is not going to run for re-election for U.S. Senate. Well, Tim Ballard over here says, you guys, I think I'm going to pull a J.D. Vance here and ride my right-wing fame, perhaps, to a Senate seat. He hasn't officially announced yet. That announcement could come within like a week or two. But basically, he's trying to make sure that when he launches his campaign, if he launches his campaign, the first things people are talking about are not sex abuse allegations. And also the Mormon Church finds this guy untouchable. They want nothing to do with him. So that might be another reason. And also, by the way, if he does win the Republican nomination in Utah, oh, he's going to be in the Senate. So, like, don't just pretend like this is, or don't just think this is some fringe dude who's never going to get elected. He's a fringe dude with abuse allegations who has a whole career of lying, allegedly, behind him. He could very much win that Republican nomination and skate to the U.S. Senate. So, scary thing to think about, but it could happen. What are some of these comments coming in about what people are saying about Ballard here. It's so much worse than that. This dude has written a bunch of historical revisionism novels claiming that the U.S. was meant to be a Mormon nation. Serious, look up his books. I don't want to look up his books, but I will take your word that he has written that type of revisionist history novels, those types of books. I mean, David Barton does that all the time when it comes to Christian nationalism. Those types of books that suggest religion and my politics and the work I do, it's all intertwined. Those often come together. Professor Plink says, I love how the Christian right was talking about this movie 24/7 until the scandals about Ballard started breaking. Now crickets. Yeah, I am curious. Like, I heard a lot about this movie when it came out, but you're right. Since these allegations came out, Christians have moved on to other stuff. I kind of wonder, are they going to come back to this movie as soon as this stuff dies down? Are they going to support Tim Ballard's inevitable Senate campaign? Or are they going to start distancing themselves? Because when it comes to politics, as we have seen, Republicans will ignore just about anything, whatever scandal you want to throw their way, if it means their guy still gets power. So that's the fear here, that maybe they can ignore the movie, but if he runs for Senate, they will flock right back to him, and that could be scary as well. You also definitely got to look up the painting Tim had commissioned. It lionizes him. No, alongside Abe Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, Glenn Beck, and Tony Robbins, which Harriet Tubman and motivational speaker Tony Robbins and Glenn Beck. You know that Clarence Thomas painting with him with his rich Republican donors surrounding him, and a dude painted it, even though that scene never actually happened. And then there are guys who paint Donald Trump like with six pack and like looking like some sort of He-Man figure. The fact that someone may have painted, or Tim Ballard painted, or someone painted that Tim Ballard with all those people, I don't doubt it for a second. And also, I totally want to see that picture right now. If you're on YouTube, go find it and let's check it out. But man, I can't believe that story went from here's a movie that right-wing crazy people absolutely love, all the way to, oh, by the way, the dude behind it is even worse than you thought, allegedly. Crazy story. If there's any other comments, I'll get to them. Otherwise, yes, please like the stream, support the stream, make a donation to patreon.com/Hemant. Give a super like if you would like, and we'll get to your question as well. And while we're doing that, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to get to a different story. I'll tell you the background of this story. It's from Louisiana. I covered this a year ago, and then I totally forgot about it because there was no movement on the story that I knew about. And there was finally movement this week. And I was so excited. I've been waiting for this for like a year, even though I haven't thought about it. But okay, I'm going to tell you what happened a year ago. It's going to take a little bit. And then I will tell you what the update is. But here's the backstory here. A year ago, like mid-September 2022, thousands of high school seniors at a public school district in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, they were taken on a field trip. And they all thought it was a college and career fair. You know why they thought that? Because that's how it was advertised by the schools. It was a college and career fair. You're going to go there. You could bring your resume. You can interview with people looking to hire. That would be great. They were actually taken to a church, and it was for a church service. And the thing is, the warning signs were there ahead of time, but basically students and their parents kind of put their trust in the administrators, or maybe they thought they could get free food and a day out of class. So they had to listen to Christian propaganda instead of anything related to college or their careers. I'm going to show you what one student wrote about that event. She was a senior who attended, or the student was a senior who attended that event. I'm going to show you what she wrote, but it is disturbing, so you have been warned here. Let's read through this together so you could see this. Today's Day of Hope field trip was a horrible experience. They called it Day of Hope. It sounds very evangelical megachurchy. Okay, that should have been a red flag. No one caught that, I guess. It was a horrible experience. It was not advertised as a religious event, but rather as a college fair. The majority of students chose to attend this field trip on the promise of free food and the opportunity to skip class However, the majority of students were not only disappointed by this event, but traumatized as well. I attended this college fair as someone who plans on applying to colleges soon, so I was disappointed once I saw what it actually was. Let's go through this. Oh my God. In the beginning of the event, there were games happening. I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see it. There were games happening, such as rap battles and singing competitions, harmless fun. After a few long introductions, the boys were asked to stand. I at first thought they would do some sort of, boys, if you've done X, sit down type of thing to further engage the audience. Instead, they asked the boys to leave the room. As a gender fluid person, I don't identify as either a boy or a girl, so this was a troubling situation for me. But I'm going to skip ahead here. However, because it was in a church, I assumed that I would be discriminated against if I went with the boys. So I stayed sitting down and I kept my mouth shut. Then, as the girls were all alone, the host introduced 3 women meant to guide us on our journey in being young queens. So again, right now, this college and career fair has been sex segregated, which is not a thing that should be happening unless there's a really good reason for it. And this church has not given us that good reason yet. So let's find out what these women said to the girls in the room. The first woman that spoke was a pastor who emphasized boring stuff. But one of the don't fit in. Yeah. Okay. Not trying to fit in with everyone else. Be yourself. That's fine. One of the examples she used for this was how she had kept her virginity through high school and college. After she announced this proudly, she expected an applause. Please clap. She mentioned how everyone knew her as the good Christian girl. She was proud of it. She also said during 9/11, everyone looked at her because they knew she would pray for them. This idea that you deserve a round of applause for being a virgin, I don't know what that's about. That might work at a youth rally inside a megachurch, but for a general high school crowd, like, whatever, you do you. That's not a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know why you want to be judged positively for that. You haven't earned it anyway. Second woman involved in education. She gave an anecdote about how a guy she met on a dating app ended up trying to kill her by strangling her. She said that she had kept the relationship a secret, so if he had ended up succeeding in killing her, no one would know. Therefore, she made the argument that if something needs to be kept secret, it shouldn't be happening at all. She also emphasized that if she had waited for the man God meant for her, it would not have happened. Because as we all know, Christian couples are always happy and no domestic violence ever happens in fundamentalist Christian homes. She uses this to essentially shame the concept of dating around and took a soulmate-esque approach on the situation. In addition, she explained that she had forgiven her ex-boyfriend for his attempted murder, even if he wasn't sorry. Again, there could possibly be a valuable message, however, it's lost in the traumatic storytelling and religious imagery. So the idea here that she dated someone and then it ended almost in the worst possible way, and the moral you take away from that is just stop dating forever. I mean, what's to stop anyone from saying, well, I met someone and he's great and I think that's what God wants for me, and then he turns out to be this crazy strangler dude. How do you delineate between the guy God wants you to wait for and the person you think is that guy? And also, how do you discern between who's a good guy and who's a bad guy? Because plenty of things conservative Christians do, especially when it comes to complementarianism and patriarchal stuff, like, I would consider that abusive too. So at what point do you say, no, this is the guy God wants for me? And also, why are you telling this to high schoolers? And also this idea that, what's the valuable message here? Don't date. That's the takeaway from all this. And that you should forgive someone who abuses you. What sort of message is that to send to kids, to girls specifically, and not guys? Because of course they don't need to hear this ever. Okay, that's only woman number 2 who spoke to the girls. Let's keep going. We're not done yet. Third speaker, PhD and a nurse. With this information, I expected a health-related speech. However, this was the most traumatizing of all. She gave an extremely detailed description of the morning. Jesus Christ. She found her son's body after he hung himself. It was so descriptive to the point I felt like I was there with her and could imagine her house around her. Jesus Christ, this happened because her son was bullied. The point is, people are too mean. We need to stick together. Oh my God. Worst possible way to tell students to be nice. Let me give you the most harmful, traumatizing, triggering story I can think of, and let my trauma become your trauma. Jesus Christ. This would be messed up in a church service, but it's not a church service. It's a public school assembly that kids were tricked into going to. And wait, we're not done. We're still going here. After the girl, I want to repeat here. This is the Facebook post made last September by a student who had to go to this event. After the girls were released, we were informed we had to register to vote in order to receive the free food advertised on the flyer. Yeah, voting is important. However, when registration is required for food on a 100-degree day at noon, there's an issue. And by the way, notice they're asking for voter registration after they have told you like purity culture bullshit and all of that stuff. Like they're telling you, you got to vote for Republican principles, wink, wink. And by the way, sign this voter registration card. Because you know that's what they were thinking. Otherwise, they never would have given teenagers voter registration cards. And they're doing it coercively. If you want food on a hot day, you need to do this. At this point, that's when the college fair occurred. There were 6 tables of various colleges set up. Okay, fine. But clearly, this is not what the show's about. The boys were then brought outside, while the girls waited in lines to get their voter registration, drank out of plastic water bottles, out of an ice chest, or attempted to find shade. Okay, the boys only had to go inside for 20 minutes compared to the girls' 40 minutes, and they had a guest speaker, Donk. Let me just sit there with that name for a second. The boys had to listen to a man named Donk. I take it that's not his real name. He gave the most fantastical story one could imagine. He started saying at the age of 9, he was shot in the stomach and saw his intestines fall into his hands. I think that's a scene from Jurassic Park. Correct me if I'm wrong. Then he was paralyzed and in a wheelchair from the ages of 11 to 13. Don't know what happened between ages 9 and 11. One day, according to him, he was with his grandma who was snoring and he started to wiggle his toes and he wasn't paralyzed anymore. Just like that. It was a miracle. And then he stood on his tippy toes too, because those grew back, I'm sure. Then Donk started messing with the wrong crowd and ended up in prison with a life sentence plus 90 years on 2 counts of armed robbery and a murder. Oh, that's a weird gap right there between I'm no longer paralyzed to I murdered somebody. Kind of curious what happened there besides wrong crowd. What was the wrong crowd? Because these people thought like people who had sex was a wrong crowd. Like, what does he consider a wrong crowd? He didn't say gang. He didn't say like bad people because of XYZ reasons. Nope, just bad. Okay. He said he was sad in jail and tried to kill himself with the bed sheet, which he demonstrated with the prop sheet on stage, and then changed his mindset and got out of jail. So the girls were told about someone taking his life, which they didn't have to hear about, but they were just told about it. And then this dude did prop comedy talking about what he did when he was in jail to try to take his life. School assembly. At the end of everything, the host made the audience make a choice. He said, if you want to eat, pizza's right outside those doors from you. If you choose change, if you want to get better, come towards the stage toward me. At this point, we had not eaten and I was done being traumatized, so I left the building. Jesus Christ. This is solely what I witnessed at the Day of Hope, with no other sides of the story. I heard from multiple sources that when boys went in for their 20 minutes, they only did push-up contests and games. No one's telling them not to have sex. Interesting. I heard from a few people that for the people that chose hope rather than pizza, Donk told another story about trying to attempt suicide by jumping in front of a train, but the train magically stopped in front of him. Sure, why not? I mean, he cured his own paralysis by doing that. So I'm sure he just went like that and stopped the train. By the way, if you're standing Donk in front of train tracks and the conductor sees you, maybe it's possible the conductor stopped the train. I don't know. What do I know? Regardless of how one may feel about religion and field trips, this experience was traumatizing. The entire situation should not have happened in the first place. The only hope I have gained from this experience is the hope no one will have to go through it again. So that was the post this student, a senior at the high school, made last year after the event occurred. It was insane. Um, by the way, according to the Advocate, which is a newspaper in Louisiana, they did an in-depth story about this event, and it turns out there were many more red flags. For example, this event, where did it take place? It took place not at some arena where you might expect a college and career fair. No, it took place at the Living Faith Christian Center, which is a church. It was sponsored by a Christian ministry called 2911 Mentoring Families. 2911 is a biblical reference to a verse, whatever. And by the way, it would be one thing if no one knew this was going to happen and this was the first time they did it. No, apparently the Advocate said they've done this many, many years in the past, and there was video of them doing it in the past. So you might wonder, after all this, what the hell did the school district say about any of this? Well, the East Baton Rouge Parish School System issued a statement defending the event as an elevation of a traditional college and career fair. They also defended their partnership with the Christian ministry that put it on, saying the group is providing additional support services for students in our district. Basically, they didn't see anything wrong with it. They were fine with it. They definitely did not apologize. And just keep in mind, if this took place at a mosque, if it took place probably at a synagogue, parents would have complained. School district officials would be apologizing. They'd be running over each other to apologize. And I want to show you one more thing here. In addition to that student who wrote about that experience, there was a mother who also attended. She was a mother of a senior at the school who also attended that event. She's also a staffer in the district, and she also shared her thoughts about the event. I want to share that with you because it's also insane. So check out what this woman wrote. Here we go. I'm trying not to share their names because that's not relevant here, but I want to make sure you could see this. I have had a day that I would never want to experience again. Not only did I have to endure feeling empathy for a family that lost their child to a senseless murder, I had to endure watching over 2,000 children's rights be violated. As an educator and a parent for EBR schools, I am physically disgusted and affected by what I witnessed today. I might have been the first to make a complaint during the event, but I obviously wasn't the first to go public. So some of this is expected. I'm just looking for the big stuff here. 2,000 students were piled up outside, having to go through a metal detector one at a time in the 100-degree weather. I had to assist a student from another school that had a panic attack with heat exhaustion. And then they just allowed them to go inside, so the metal detector didn't matter. Once they were inside, they had the talk. We heard about the talks. My transgender child was discriminated against for walking out. They talked about all this stuff. We discussed that. We had females in the bathrooms crying due to the topics of discussion. The boys were, we talked about this. From the beginning, no topics were discussed with the boys, but there were male chauvinistic competition for monetary rewards for the winners. They were hyped up and egged on, doing push-ups for money. Yes, we heard about some of this stuff. When I went to confront the unethical situation, Councilman Darrell Hurst was the one handing out voter registration. They had an elected official participating in this event, which is insane. It was propaganda that was having children under the age of 18 fill out personal information without parent approval. When all was said and done, all students were brought back into the church. A female student was picked out and told by a man leading the closing, "I'll give you $100 if you can get through me into the stage." What, Red Rover shit, like to be an alpha female? I don't know what that's all about. There were students who were told they cannot go to the bathroom. There were trans students who were bullied. Other students poured water on top of transgender students' heads without any repercussions. I don't even know what that's about, but what the hell? I am a Christian. I have political values and the same beliefs, but God forbid I mention anything about sexual orientation, religion, or political agendas in my classroom. Yet it's okay for the district's leaders to support and fund an event that could cost me my career? No wonder there's a shortage of teachers. Yes, kudos to you for saying all that. I only hope that the superintendent hears the pain and suffering from students and parents that were affected. I am ashamed to work for a superintendent that uses a personal agenda to push all this stuff. Okay, I'll pause there for a second. So that's what a student and a mother of a student wrote after the event happened. And by the way, you might be wondering, what did the school district say in the moment? Like, did they have anything besides a statement to news officials about this? Yes, they did. Let me show you what they posted right after the event. Today's Day of Hope event was amazing. We were honored to hear directly from students to help them address the issues they face and to provide them with motivation and guidance to empower their choices. I loved it today. It made me realize so much, like there's always room to hope and that other kids are dealing with the same stuff, said an anonymous student. Yeah, sure. There we go. Day of Hope was outstanding. Today was the most amazing experience I've ever witnessed for young people, said an anonymous parent. Yeah, sure. And my girlfriend's in Canada, you guys. She's totally there. Look at the pictures. Like, you could see the church with the cross in the background. You could see it. It's there. Like, the school's clearly not ashamed of any of this. They're just bragging about it to everyone. So again, this was a year ago. It was insane. None of this should have happened. When The Advocate, the newspaper, reached out to the guy who ran the Christian ministry, his name was Tremaine Sterling. He basically said, yeah, we've been doing this for years. Why is anyone complaining about it? He said the focus was giving young people what they need to prepare for their next steps after high school. But the thing is, the people there were not interested in what these kids did after high school. They didn't help them plan for college or their careers or guide them to a potential career path. They just pushed conservative Christian messaging on those kids, wasting their time, traumatizing them, and giving them a different way to ruin their lives if they wanted to. Like, the kids deserve better than that. And also, it's arguably illegal. So, I told you, all this happened a year ago. Why am I talking about it now? It's because of this glorious thing that I will share with you right over here. Look at this. This is from this week. 4 people, all anonymous. Jane Roe on behalf of her child, Jennifer Roe, and then Jane Doe and her child, Jessie Doe. Those are all pseudonyms, but basically 2 mothers and their kids are suing everyone involved in all of this. They're going after everybody. They're going after members of the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board, the district superintendent, current and former members of the school board, 2911 Academy, the Christian ministry, and that ministry's president, Tremaine Sterling. They're going after all of them. And those 2 kids who are filing the lawsuit, they were seniors last year. They've graduated, and the mothers say they never would have consented to exposing their kids to this event if they knew the details. So a lot of the stuff that's in the lawsuit is stuff I have just gone over with you. It just reiterates that stuff did happen. It wasn't just one angry kid making stuff up or a parent making stuff up. Like, no, that stuff happened according to the lawsuit. It also says we have evidence that this partnership has been happening since 2016. It also says the 2 sides were, quote, engaged in a conspiracy to expose public school children to overtly sectarian and religious experiences. It also says the district spent $9,800 to run that event. It also quotes Sterling, the Christian guy running the nonprofit, lying on a news show right before the event because he said, quote, we're going to have college fairs, career days, workforce people. Young people will have an opportunity literally to get hired on the spot. That's what the Christian minister said before the Day of Hope event to the local news because he was invited to do an interview there, and that didn't happen. And also, the lawsuit says that the district claimed every principal knew about this event in advance. They knew what was going to happen. The lawsuit says that's not true because at least one principal, quote, knew nothing of the event in advance. It also says the church had poor cell phone service in case any kids wanted to call their parents so they wouldn't be traumatized. Well, good luck getting through. So the 4 plaintiffs there, they are anonymous. I don't know if it's the student who wrote that Facebook post or the mother who wrote that Facebook post. I don't know if it's them. I did reach out to them. They didn't respond to me. But whatever, it's anonymous. They say they are seeking compensation for the mental anguish they suffered. They want the courts to put a stop to this shit from ever happening again. They want to stop the district from ever, quote, presenting, supporting, funding, facilitating, or promoting another Day of Hope event ever again. They're calling for an end to that partnership between the two. So I don't know why it took a year for this to happen. Maybe it's because it took a while to get all the facts together and get the documentation on all this. But I saw this coming a year ago. There's no way that was going to go unchallenged. And man, kudos to those plaintiffs. Even if they're anonymous, it takes a lot of courage to bring forth this lawsuit. They say they're doing it anonymously because they fear what people in their community might do to them for speaking out against this. And the district hasn't said anything yet. They haven't responded to the lawsuit. When they do, I'm sure they'll just say we can't comment on it or something, but prayer is not going to help. So I can't believe no adult, no administrator in that district saw what was going to happen forever ago and didn't do anything to put a stop to it. It's just completely messed up. Well, I'll follow it. I hope it goes okay, but man, crazy story there. I wonder how many atheists came out of the event. You know what? I asked that question to myself. Can you put that question back up there? Like, I ask myself that question all the time because for something like that, how many people did it push away from Christianity who might have, maybe they were fine with it or they called themselves Christians, but then they go to an event like that and they're like, oh shit, no, I don't want anything to do with this. And they're like, then they begin to they question their faith. They begin to be atheists. Maybe there were people who were atheists who left hardcore atheists. And maybe there were a lot of people, I would guess this is the majority of this group, who didn't have any thoughts about religion, because I think most people never think about it, who saw what it's like. If you've never been to a megachurch, you've never heard that type of stuff before. And they're like, oh shit, I cannot be involved in any group like this. These people are insane. And traumatizing. And I hope, that's the sort of thing. There's a joke to be made about, what book should someone read if they want to become an atheist? And the answer is the Bible. It'll push them away. The road to atheism is littered with the Bible. But the same thing is true of megachurch services and events like this. Like, if this is the vision of Christianity that a lot of people get exposure to, why would they want to be a part of it? Because they know better than what those people at the event were saying. They know that what the women were saying about the importance of virginity and how you should forgive your abusers, like, they know that's BS. The kids know that. And they know better than the adults who are trying to speak down to them, talk down to them. So, man, I hope that's the case. I wouldn't be surprised. Career fair. Yeah, that's what they was documented as. I don't know. I guess being in prison is kind of a career. That is very true. Donk, if that is your real name, which it is not. The wheels of justice grind slowly, but at least it happened. Yeah, right on. It took a year for it to happen. I will say, none of the church-state separation groups that tend to go after these things, they're not involved in this lawsuit. The law firm that is filing the lawsuit is just as far as I can tell, like an independent firm, but they're not connected to like the ACLU or any atheist-related church-state separation group. So again, I don't know what took so long, but yeah, at least it happened, and we'll see how this goes. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm trying to figure out how any judge says, yeah, the district did nothing wrong here. And I can't imagine that's going to be the case. Are there any other thoughts about this from all of you? I am skimming some of these comments over here, and it sounds like you're as surprised as I am. Oh, great. The Ballard painting is in my email. I can't wait to see it. I'll look at it in the next break. Oh man, that story, man, that traumatized me good. That there's too much bad, horrible stuff in there. Okay, let's move on to a happier story involving World War II and the Nazis. It's just a week of horrible, horrible news, right? Actually, no, I lie. I will come back to that in a moment. I'm going to do something else because I need a break for like 2 seconds just to catch up. Then we'll go to the World War II. I saw this clip someone sent me the other day. It involves Richard Dawkins. And if you've heard me talk about Richard Dawkins or you've seen the videos on my YouTube channel for a while, like one of the things that's really frustrating is the way Richard Dawkins, who is the go-to person if you're a reporter or a media outlet and you want someone to talk about atheism, of course they want Richard Dawkins. He's still like the most famous atheist in the world, which is fine. He wrote The God Delusion. I get it. It's not a jealousy thing. It's like I get why they want him to talk about it. But every time recently, it seems like he uses his platform to spread lies about trans people, to insist that trans people are lying to themselves. They're not really who they say they are. And he says things that trans people would never agree with. So for a guy whose whole thing is, don't straw man the argument, let's steel man the argument. Here he is straw manning what people say. And that's how bad it is. I'm going to show you this clip. This is from a Christian pastor who was saying exactly what you would expect an white evangelical pastor to say about gay people and trans people. He's going to say all that stuff. It's wrong. You're mentally deluded, all that sort of stuff. But notice how he uses Richard Dawkins in this. Let me play this clip for you. It's about 2 minutes long.
Everything Jesus said was intentional. He never said anything accidentally. And by giving these examples, what he was doing was not only affirming a strict understanding of gender, but also reaffirming God's plan for sexuality, his design for it. God designed sex to be enjoyed between one man and one woman in a marital relationship before God. And anything that falls outside of that, whether transgender or heterosexual or anything outside of the man-woman marital relationship, according to God and affirmed by Jesus, is sinful, and it needs to be addressed. And for many people, you might hear this say, okay, fine, I understand the historical biblical position on gender and sexuality. Got it. I just don't agree. I don't believe the Bible. And if that's the case, then let's step outside of the Bible. And let's step into the secular world, particularly in the world of science. Some of you may be familiar with the name Richard Dawkins. So that is an atheist who, because of comments like this, had an award, a humanist award of all things, that were awarded to him. He had that stripped, and he was labeled as a bigot and transphobic. And the reality is, to even question transgender ideology will often get you branded. People like me, a pastor who holds to the Bible as the source of truth and the standard by which we measure right and wrong, can very easily also be branded as just another white, cisgendered Christian spewing his hatred.
So I did cut out a clip there, but the clip he showed everyone was Richard Dawkins appearing on Real Time with Bill Maher and basically saying there are only two genders and it's, as simple as chromosomes or whatever he said to Helen Joyce a little while ago. And this pastor is saying, you guys, the Bible says trans people don't exist and LGBTQ people shouldn't be allowed to get married or something. But if you don't believe that, if you don't want to listen to the Bible, how about you listen to science? And then plays the clip of Richard Dawkins saying the same transphobic bullshit. And it says, see, so they agree with us on all of this stuff. So, I mean, it should bother Richard Dawkins that conservative Christian pastors are using him to promote their bigotry. There was a day when Richard Dawkins would have been disturbed by that, where he would have spoken out against that sort of thing. I have not seen him. I don't think I have missed this. I don't think I've seen him speak out against pastors who promote anti-trans stuff, because by and large, he's with all those people. I actually spoke to a friend this week who's trying to defend Dawkins to me. And I think this is a belief that a lot of atheists have, which is he means well, he's trying to explain this. He's not really anti-trans. And the reaction I always have is, you don't even have to ask me about this. How many trans people have you talked to about this who know these issues, who follow Richard Dawkins, who have something to say about this? There's a lot of them. I follow a bunch of them. Have you? Have you talked to any of these people? Because they could tell you far better than I could what he's getting wrong, why it's harmful, why it would be so much nicer if he would be speaking out against this stuff. But he's fallen into this trap of anyone who defends trans people, promotes trans rights, says trans girls should be allowed to play sports in high school or something. They're all woke and they're all, part of some wokest religion or something like that. It's insane. And pretty much all those new atheist types have fallen down that same rabbit hole, and they're all friends with each other too. So they all just, when one does it, the others spread it, and they all tell each other how smart they are, and they're famous enough that I think it's very easy for them to just be surrounded by people who tell them how amazing they are, which is a concept totally foreign to me because I only surround myself with people who mock me incessantly at all times. So I don't know what the hell that feeling is like. But I think that's the problem. They don't have enough people close to them willing to tell them they're wrong, they're hurting people, they ought to stop. They could read up on this stuff. They could talk to someone who actually has a different perspective. For all these people who are like, let's have dangerous conversations, they never have it with liberals who want to call them out on their bullshit. Let's talk about the Pope. So there is this story that made the news this week that actually got me thinking. It made me ask the question, what was the Catholic Church doing during the Holocaust? And I felt really bad asking myself that question because I don't think I've ever in my life given that much thought to that question. I don't think it came up when I learned about this stuff in school. I don't think in the years since the role of the Catholic Church ever played much of a role in my understanding of World War II and the Holocaust. Like, I don't know who the Pope was during that time. I don't know what the Catholic Church said. I just assumed that I'm sure there were good Catholics trying to do the right thing and help people as much as they could. I'm sure there were many Catholics who were very much on the other side because that's true of any large institution. I just didn't know. But a couple things that I have since learned. The Vatican was officially neutral during World War II. I want to be clear, not the Holocaust, but they were neutral during World War II because they didn't want to take sides, which is a thought we have heard many times in subsequent wars as well, and it never ages well. When there's clearly one side that's on the moral high ground, that has the moral high ground, and like the other side has a dictator that's invading places and killing people, you shouldn't have to be neutral. Anyway, the Vatican was neutral during World War II, but because of the invasion of Poland, which is highly Catholic, and other Catholic majority nations, Pope Pius XII, who was the Pope during all of World War II pretty much, Pope Pius XII, he had condemned anti-Semitism. And that's a good thing. And the church did assist people who were being persecuted by the Nazis. But by and large, the historical take on Pope Pius XII is that he could have done more. The church could have done more to help people during that time. There's been a play written about that. It's called The Deputy, A Christian Tragedy, all about Pius XII's supposed inaction during World War II. There was a 2008 book called Hitler's Pope about Pope Pius XII, which is really not the nickname you want for yourself in history. That probably doesn't help his image. But the point is, people have been saying this for many years now. Like, there's been art dedicated to exploring what the Catholic Church and its leader did not do during that time. And when the Pope did speak out at the time, it was always in general terms, like violence is bad. But he didn't single out Hitler. He didn't single out the Third Reich. He did not explicitly talk about how Jews were being targeted. And one thing that you could say in the Pope's defense is that maybe, like a lot of people, he didn't realize just what was happening during the Holocaust. Because in 1942, a lot of the details about what was happening in the death camps, it wasn't well understood by a lot of people. Like, yeah, people knew what was going on, but the details were scarce. You could say that about the war in Ukraine right now. Like, what's Russia doing in Ukraine? What atrocities, what war crimes are happening right now? If you follow the news, you might have heard some of them. But by and large, I don't think people really have a good idea of just how brutal and horrific that stuff is. And when you talk about the Holocaust, it's so much more, right? And so here's why this is news this week. I want to share this with you. This is the headline in the New York Times and then posted by other places. A letter found in Vatican archives confirms that the church was told about the death camps. Basically, the story here is that Pope Pius XII history can no longer say he didn't know enough about what was happening to speak out forcefully. No, he did know what was happening at a time when he could have said something. And let me summarize this article for you. A couple things you should know, which is it usually the Vatican doesn't unseal a pope's archives for like 70 years after their death. They keep that stuff in a lockbox. And for Pope Pius XII, we have another 10 years to go before his shit is unsealed. But Pope Francis did say, you know what, we're going to do it early. We're going to do it now because the church is not afraid of history. So he said, I'm going to give historians and archivists access to Pope Pius XII's documents so they can study it and figure this stuff out. And you know what? Whatever it says, that's fine. That's what we got to live with. So good on him. That's what he should have done. Maybe he could have done it sooner. Whatever. He did it now. And one of those archivists, the guy who works for the Vatican, but I think he's kind of an independent guy contracted by the Vatican. His name is Giovanni Cocco. He's been studying the letters of Pope Pius XII ever since they were unsealed. And what he found was a letter from a German priest who was part of the resistance against Nazis. He was working in Germany as a priest, but he was conveying information to the outside world. And he told the Pope's secretary exactly what was going on. And because this priest was so trusted, had such a good reputation, there's a really good chance, according to the archivist, that the Pope saw that letter. And according to the letter, according to the secretary, this letter is dated December 14th, 1942, and he talks about the state of persecution of the church in Germany, but it includes an appendix with the number of priests imprisoned in one concentration camp. Let me see if I can, there we go. Check that out. The letter includes, see if you could see this here. There we go. The letter includes an appendix with the number of priests imprisoned at one concentration camp near Munich. He mentions the Auschwitz death camp in a reference to another. And he told of the thousands of Polish people and Jews being murdered by the Nazis at another death camp. Like he's laying it out there. The letter actually said 6,000 people a day are being murdered in furnaces in one of the death camps specifically. And in fact, if you look, this is that death camp's website. If you could see this, it says, it's a little hard to see because of the thing there, but look at the top line there. Between March and December of 1942, about 450,000 people were murdered there, most of whom were Polish Jews, as well as the Jewish deportees from other countries. So that's what the letter said. That's what the Pope supposedly knew about. So if the Pope knew about those atrocities, like, why didn't he say more? And there's a few reasons for that, according to the archivist. Cocco said the Pope might have been worried about what could happen to Catholics in Poland, in Eastern Europe, everywhere where Nazis were in control. Like the fear is, if you speak out in defense of Jews, are they going to retaliate? Is Hitler going to retaliate against Catholics in these other places? Maybe you could say, okay, legitimate worry. Maybe he was worried Catholics would be persecuted in the same way. But that would still mean that instead of using his platform to still forcefully condemn Nazis and defend Jewish people, he chose silence so that his own people would not have attention drawn to them, which again, in historical hindsight, that seems like the coward's way out. Like if the guy running the Catholic Church doesn't have the moral guts to speak out against atrocities, what are we supposed to expect of you? So that's one reason. He also might have feared that if he condemns the Nazis, then a lot of the Germany-affiliated nations will break with the Catholic Church. alienating Catholics and potential Catholics in those countries. So basically, that would suggest a self-serving pope prioritized the church's membership numbers over the people who were being murdered by the Nazis. It is also possible the Pope thought he could negotiate with Hitler as if diplomacy was going to stop a dictator. Like, I don't know which of those scenarios puts the Pope in a good light here, because any of them, it shows an act of cowardice and historically awful injustice. Another theory has been that the Pope could not verify what he was hearing, so he didn't want to jump the gun. But another scholar, I think quoted in that New York Times piece, said the letter that he got from this one priest in Germany, that's not the only one he got. Other people were relaying the realities on the ground to the Pope at the time. So, like, this letter should have carried more weight, but it's not like it was the only thing he was working off of. And one reason all this matters, not just to correct the historical record and make sure we know the Catholic Church has always taken the wrong moral side on a lot of big issues, but also the Catholic Church has moved to make Pope Pius XII a saint. There are 4 steps he needs to overcome. He's officially gone through 2 of them. And to his credit, Pope Francis has he's pushed pause on the sainthood button for Pope Pius until historians have a chance to more thoroughly examine all these unsealed records. But at this point, like, what happens if he does become a saint? What does that tell you about the Catholic Church? They made Mother Teresa a saint, and she was a moral monster too, for a bunch of reasons. So, like, what is it if these people can become saints, if Mother Teresa is a saint, if Pope Pius XII becomes a saint, what the hell do you have to do to not become one? Because according to these historical documents, Pope Pius XII took the coward's way out when it came to speaking out against Nazis. And all of this should bring into question the church's supposed virtue. Why would anyone in their right mind want to belong to an institution that is just repeatedly on the wrong side of all these simple moral questions? These are not like 50-50 questions. These are like, oh yeah, there's a right side and a wrong side, and it's not hard to figure out which is which. I mean, history, whether you're looking at the sex abuse scandals, the Crusades, Inquisition, whatever, history almost never shines a positive light on the Catholic Church because they have been against marginalized people, against transparency. They wage wars. They harbor abusive priests. They've resisted giving victims justice. They argue against look-back windows that would eliminate statute of limitations so victims could get justice. And now, on top of all that, we have a pope who may have looked the other way during World War II because, membership might go down maybe. How could anyone still be Catholic when all of this is what the church represents? I don't care what they're telling you in your church. I don't care if you like your priest. This is the institution you're giving money to, that you're trying to send your kids to their schools. Like, the church has no business pretending it has any moral authority. Oh, Jesus. What questions and concerns are we discussing here? Was there any case for the argument that the Third Reich would have targeted Catholics if the Vatican had spoken up? I don't know. I don't know the historical side of this. There's just the theory that if these people are going after everybody, it seems, and maybe there are some people out there that didn't know they were specifically targeting a certain group of people at the exclusion of others. Like, maybe they were worried, like, wow, if Hitler, like, wins the war, maybe we want to be on his side, maybe. Like, I don't know what they were thinking, but I guess being very ignorant on this subject, I guess it's possible that people worried Hitler might go after Catholics once he was done with other people. I mean, there are plenty of people right now who are not speaking out against Putin, who are not saying bad things about him, who are not seemingly worried if he takes over more land. And you have to wonder what their motivations are for that too. Do they not know enough? Or do they just want to stay on his good side just in case? I don't know. But it's very troubling. It was common knowledge what happened. People just didn't care. I have to believe that's true. Like, how do you not know about these atrocities? People were relaying it at the time. There were people speaking out about it at the time. I guess my question is, the people who have the biggest pulpits, metaphorically speaking, how much were they speaking out against it? How much did people care about it? Because again, if you just look at today, there are plenty of horrible things happening. Some people have platforms and speak out honorably in favor or against these various issues. But a lot of people either spread misinformation, try to spread disinformation, don't talk about it at all, try to distract you. And I'm kind of curious how many of them either didn't care, like you said, or just they didn't think it was as big of an issue as it really was. They were ignorant, but not intentionally. So they were just being fed bad information. I don't know the answer. This is where my lack of history knowledge comes into play there. Catholics keeping quiet about atrocities? The hell, you say? I know. Never happens today, except for every other story I'm going to talk about today. It's a common thing. While we're taking a quick break here, I'll just add back here. If you want to have a question answered, leave a super like. It's much appreciated. And happy to get to your questions as soon as I can. And of course, as we're going through a story, if you have a question, we are marking them down. We will get to them as soon as we can as well. Let me jump to another story. This one kind of has a happy ending, so it'll break up the monotony here. This story goes back to April of this past year. So in spring of this year, there was a sophomore in Minnesota, in Chaska High School in Minnesota. His name is Eli Frost. And he launched this petition I'm going to share with you here. Update the high school graduation ceremony venue and support our students. And you can see in the picture there, we got Jefferson erecting the wall of separation between church and state. And basically what this petition said is that this Eastern Carver County School Board, it held its graduations every year at a place called Grace Church, basically a mega church in the community. And Eli, who launched this petition, said that doesn't seem to be good. That seems wrong. He pointed out in this petition, Grace Church has a long history. Where did this go here? You could see this right here. Grace Church has a long history of making derogatory public statements against the LGBTQ community. Further, they do not support divorce, even in situations of domestic violence. As a community of students and parents who represent a wide variety of marginalized identities, we must change this venue. I mean, all of that. Fair point. He's making the right point. He also pointed out that a lot of students have to choose whether or not to attend that ceremony in a place that condemns their identity. And if they have to do that, doesn't that violate our own district's anti-discrimination policy? Fair point on the other side. You know what I mean? Like, so Eli over here is right on the principle. He's right on the ethics. And the leader of the church, by the way, didn't deny any of this, because the church's website, which I will also show you here, they actually point out, here you go. This is from the church's website. Marriage covenant should be between a man and a woman. Like, they don't hide their anti-gay, anti-LGBTQ mentality here, which, again, not a surprise to anyone who follows this stuff, but there you go. And he said, Grace Church affirms the teaching of the Bible regarding gender, marriage, and divorce. It does not discriminate against anyone except for gay people who want to get married and trans people who want to, exist. So whatever. He's speaking Christianese, but basically the church said, yeah, the kid's right, whatever. Now, here's the thing. In defense of the school district, they actually had reasons. They said, we have our graduation ceremony in the church, secular reasons. They said the largest venue in the district is one of the high school's football stadiums, and that has a capacity of 2,500 people. Grace Church, on the other hand, seats 7,000. That is more than enough for all the graduates and their friends and their family members, and we don't need to do any ticket reservation system. So they said the venue's just bigger, and that's good for a district of our size. That makes sense. They said the church is indoors. It is air-conditioned. There is technology there to live stream the services for people who can't attend. It's a little harder to set that up outside of it. It's closer to both high schools in the district. And the school district also made clear that there's no proselytizing at the church. Like, we rent the space, they said, for $28,000 a year. That includes security. That includes traffic control costs. It's all strictly business. The pastor doesn't speak at the ceremony. There's no prayer at the ceremony. There might be some church paraphernalia in the building, but that stuff we can't really remove. It's not like anyone's handing out pamphlets. So I get where the district is coming from there. Like, no one's accusing them of trying to proselytize to students. The school district's just saying, we use the church because it's convenient. What do you want from us? The spokesperson for the district even said in April, we take great pains to make sure religious symbols are not present as part of the ceremony. Okay, so I get where the school district's coming from. The question, though, is whether the convenience of the church outweighs all the other legitimate concerns that Eli was bringing up, because he argued that it didn't. He said those amenities are not worth it when the venue might alienate some students and families of different faiths who don't agree with the church's teachings. That's a worthwhile trade-off to go somewhere else, he said. And again, if this graduation was taking place at a nearby mosque, I think a lot of parents would really quickly figure out why they don't want to have it at a religious place. I think the district would be like, yeah, we should change venues. But I think because it's at a church, they're all like, come on, this is default. We can all live with this, right? The Star Tribune, the local newspaper, they pointed out other large districts in the state don't have this problem because they just rent out larger venues, like basketball arenas, college basketball arenas, places like that. So it could be done. The district just had to figure out if a neutral venue that had some inconveniences was worth the slightly longer drive, the slightly higher cost. But that also meant they were basically choosing a Christian venue while downplaying that it had anything to do with Christianity, even though there's no chance in hell it would ever be at a non-Christian religious building, right? So that petition got a lot of views. I got a lot of people signing up, and the district said they were listening. And what's amazing now is that this week, after all of this, check out actually, let me back up. Last month, let me share with you what the district's own lawyers wrote to the school board members. Check this out. This is a memorandum that the district's attorneys submitted to the school board. And they're basically saying, at your request, we have researched the legal issues and liability risks relating to having graduation at Grace Church. And I won't read you the whole thing. It's a few pages long. But basically, the district said, we face a substantial risk of litigation if we keep holding our graduation ceremonies in that church. They said to the extent that any viewpoints espoused by Grace Church leaders fall within the reach of our anti-discrimination policy, people who claim they're violating our district's policies could sue us in the future. And by the way, I should say a lot of the things in this letter, they're echoing warnings that were made by the Freedom from Religion Foundation and Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Those groups sent letters to the district saying, we're not suing you, but we are telling you you might get sued because there's a lot of problems here. And if a student wanted to, we're just saying it might happen. And now the district's own lawyers are like, yeah, we read what they said and they totally have a point. And hey, board, you should really rethink this. And by the way, Freedom from Religion Foundation also warned the district in June that this issue is not going to go away even if a student like Eli Frost graduated, because if the district continued to hold services at the church, their graduation ceremonies, any parent or student who felt their rights were violated could still pursue legal claims even after they graduated. And so with that, this week, there was some news. If you could check this out here, let me share this with you. This is the news this week. The school district has chosen the Target Center for graduations after complaints over the church venue. The school board changed its mind. They voted to move out of Grace Church. They were on 1-year-long contracts with the church. They said, you know what, this spring, we're not going to sign the contract with them. And they're going to hold it at the Target Center in Minneapolis instead. I can't remember which sporting facility the Target Center is, but it's a big arena. They're going to hold it there. Here's what you got to know, though. The price will go from $28,000 to $62,000, $62,200. That's about $55,000 to rent the space, another $7,000 to rent like shuttle buses to shuttle families back and forth between the district and the venue. So you might be wondering, like, well, they're paying like 2 to 3 times as much for this new venue. People are going to complain about this. And I think the district's thinking is, yeah, but that's still going to be cheaper than the lawsuit we will lose, because their lawyers are telling them you're going to lose. So I think that's the calculus going on here. Eli Frost, by the way, welcomed the decision. He was very graceful in his note. He said, "I would like to thank our superintendent for making this choice. There are hundreds of students, parents, and educators who will benefit from this change. The district, with this decision, has shown commitment to being an inclusive school district for everyone, regardless of unchosen differences." Just a beautiful way to put that. FFRF, by the way, gave him a $2,000 scholarship just for launching that petition, by the way. I will also note that there are nearby public school districts, that also hold graduation at Grace Church. They have not changed yet. So there's a question now that this district has moved its venue, will those other ones too? We don't know yet. One other note, there is now another petition launched by another student to bring back graduation to Grace Church. And I laughed reading this. I mean, I don't want to laugh at a kid. I am laughing at the petition, though, because the way it's written, it just makes it sound like it's something only a privileged Christian could write. The petition says Grace Church has always been a pillar of our community, and that the church created an atmosphere filled with joy, unity, and familiarity, which I'm sure is not something a Muslim or atheist student would say. That you have to wear your Jesus tinted glasses to say something like that. Just because something is tradition, it doesn't mean you have to keep following it if it's a bad tradition. You know what I mean? This petition also notes crime statistics. Like, well, if we go to the big bad city, all of our cars will get carjacked. It's like, well, then take the shuttle. You'll be fine. Like, kids who live in Minneapolis are just fine at their graduations, honey. You'll be okay. What's surprising to me is this petition, there's no push by the student who wrote this petition to move graduation to a different secular venue that's not the church. It doesn't say, let's go to the football field and hold graduation, because they're not interested in going to somewhere local and secular. They just want it back in church. Like, that's the sort of thinking the school board had, and they were going to get sued over it. So, like, Eli Frost petition, it got the job done. This new petition to bring it back to church is going to go nowhere because the student who wrote it doesn't know what she's talking about, and neither do the many people signing that petition because they think they're making a difference. Before I go to the next story, is there anything else we want to talk about here? Yes, Jesus tinted glasses, man. They're all over the place. They come into play. There's so many Christians. Like, I don't know how hard it is to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like, it shouldn't be that hard. Just imagine what would happen if you're in the religious minority and then act accordingly. And there are so few people that seem capable of doing any of that. I'm going to get to the next story here. This is another video I want to share with you. This one is disturbing. I am laying that out for you right now. And it's one of those new independent fundamentalist Baptist preachers. And I'm trying to come up with the best version of what he says. And I don't know. I'm just going to play you the clip. I'll let you appreciate what he is saying, and we'll discuss it afterwards. This is Devin Rogers, and here you go.
I'm sure there's a lot of Africans that were brought over into slavery, which wasn't right, but they got the gospel when they got here. And you know what? I bet you there's a lot of Africans that if they hadn't have been brought over, not saying it was right, don't misunderstand, not justifying the slavery in the situation, but God, I still believe, used it. And now I'm sure there's a lot of Africans that got the gospel, and they're in heaven right now because they got the gospel. You know, what would be better? For them to have lived their entire life in Africa free, doing their voodoo or whatever, and then dying and going to hell, right? Or what happened? And then they go to heaven. They get the opportunity. Now, again, it doesn't justify it. The ends do not justify the means, but this is how God works. This is what God does in the Bible. And we have black people in here. I don't think any of you guys were ever slaves. I was never a slave. It's like, oh, white privilege. you were never a slave. You were never living during the time, unless you're very old, like 60 or 70 maybe, or 80 years old, you're never even living during a time where segregation was a thing in this country. I mean, what are you crying about? Nothing even happened to you. You're just making up stuff. You can't look at the facts that I was reading and just attribute that to some kind of white privilege. It's not real. Get over it. Quit having all the excuses. Why don't you take some responsibility for your choices, be content with whatever situation you were born into, and make the most of it. God's not limited to your situation. He can do above what we ask or think.
You guys. Trying to justify, he's not justifying slavery, except for all the times he's doing it. But I do want to summarize what he said there. He said it's better, what would be better, for them to have lived their entire life in Africa free and then dying and going to hell, or being enslaved in America and being taught, being forced, having the gospel forced upon them so they can go to heaven. What would be better? And then if anyone complains about it, he's like, what do you know? You weren't a slave. You haven't experienced segregation unless you're like 60 or older. It's like, yes, racism is all gone. People of color have never experienced any racism whatsoever. Like the amount of mental exercise mental gymnastics this guy has to do to convince himself we don't have to talk about slavery. It had a good side. You can complain about it, but it was overall good. And don't complain about it because none of you were affected by it, with no acknowledgement of what he stands to gain because his ancestors were probably not enslaved. Like, that's sort of ignorant thinking. And usually these new IFB people say a lot of horrific stuff about LGBTQ people, and they're not on paper racist. Like, that's not part of their beliefs, but it's that mentality that says whatever is in the gospel, saving people, that takes priority over everything else. And it leads to sermons like this, which are racist, which justify or rationalize racism. It rationalizes slavery as if there was a good thing. I mean, in Florida, didn't they just get in trouble recently, or tried to get in trouble, because they said there were some good aspects, there were some benefits to slavery or something? It's like, buddy, you're missing the point. I don't care what benefit you think they got, but it's not, no one's celebrating that one. Just absolutely crowd. This is an interesting comment right here. I was told by a relative once that if Obama had acted more white, the country wouldn't be so divided. That makes me laugh because I know I believe that entirely. This idea that Obama or even Biden now, like, why don't they do more to heal our divisions? It's like, what do you think they're doing? They just exist. They say very boring stuff. I say this as a Democratic voter, like bleeding heart progressive. Like, they're way too conservative for my tastes, but like, they're not divisive. They're boring. If you want to look for who's being divisive, it's the people being divisive on purpose. Like, who do you think is not? Who thinks Trump is a unifier? You know what I mean? Anyway, all right, I'll wrap this up soon. There's a few more things I want to talk about. There's one story I really want to get to here because I had a chance to see this one from the ground up, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. So recently, the Catholic Diocese of Cleveland, they issued a policy a few weeks ago. Basically, these were policies that would apply to all 84 Catholic schools and churches in their diocese. And it's all about how to deal with trans people and LGBTQ people. And basically, the rules said a few things. Schools are banned from using a trans kid's pronouns or their name, dead name, all time. That's it. They banned trans kids from using the correct bathrooms. They banned trans girls from participating in sports. Trans boys, by the way, they don't care about. They can play whatever they want. They banned trans kids from attending a same-sex institution if it didn't match the sex on their birth certificate, if it didn't match the gender on their birth certificate. It banned all kids from going to a school dance with someone of the same gender, even unless that person was a platonic friend. So, a bunch of gay kids are going to have a lot of platonic friends now. It banned kids from wearing clothing that is inconsistent with the person's God-given biological sex. I'm going to show you. This is what it looks like in the document. Here you go. I'm summarizing it, but it's all here. They have it listed out very clearly. It also said you have to wear clothing, like I said, that is consistent with your biological sex. It banned symbols promoting LGBTQ pride, including rainbows and flags. It bans trans kids from taking puberty blockers or hormones meant to help with transitioning, which I'm not sure how they police, but okay. And most importantly, as you could see from the screen you're looking at, educators have to out trans kids to their parents. Like if a kid tells their teacher they are trans, the teacher, or they want to go by a different pronoun or a different name or whatever, the teacher has to tell the parents. And the document says if that might lead to physical abuse at home, which is why a student might confide in a teacher and not their parents, well, then staffers, no, don't call the police. You just have to get in touch with the diocese legal office and the bishop's designated moral theologian. Like, this is the document the diocese released. Just horrible ideas meant to hurt LGBTQ students, okay? The thing that surprised me is I'm like, isn't that just Catholic Church policy? Like, I'm surprised the diocese didn't already have that in place, because it totally sounds like something they would have had in place already, but okay. This is a new policy. They just instituted it. There you go. Just so we're clear, the Vatican agrees with all of that. The Vatican has said trans identities, quote, annihilate the concept of nature. Pope Francis has called gender ideology one of the most dangerous ideological colonizations. That's Pope Francis. And I should also point out, most Catholics in the US are way better than the Pope on this stuff. This is from the Pew Research Center. This is a question. The question here is, what percentage of Catholics in every country favor or oppose same-sex marriage? And you could see this black line right here that says 61% of Catholics in the United States support same-sex marriage, which is great. I mean, I wish it was higher, but that's really good. The majority of Catholics in the US support same-sex marriage, even though the Catholic Church says absolutely not. 37% of US Catholics acknowledge the existence of trans people. I mean, that's a really low number, but it's 37% higher than what the Vatican wants to see. So the thing is, if practicing Catholics in Cleveland thought their local institutions were going to buck the trend, the people in charge of the Catholic diocese are like, oh, no. We are right in line with what the Vatican says. And it got so bad, like this was such a surprising document that even the mayor of Cleveland spoke out against it. Check this out. This is from Mayor Justin Bibb. As a Christian, you can see this right here. He said on Instagram, I don't think this is still up. He may have deleted this. But as a Christian, the new Catholic Diocese of Cleveland anti-LGBTQ plus policy is a shocking betrayal of the church teachings that have shaped who I am today. And I appreciate that sentiment, but also no, it is not a shocking betrayal at all, because this is what the Vatican teaches. This is actually a pretty standard affirmation of church teachings. It's not a betrayal. But I get where he's coming from. Faith is about universal love and acceptance. Instead, this new policy forces LGBTQ plus kids to hide their authentic selves and attend school in fear of persecution for who they are. Again, I appreciate it, but you're giving the church way more credit than it deserves. Okay, but here's where I want to go with this story. One of the people who was very upset about this, he saw the policy and he was deeply frustrated by it, was a guy named Daniel Kenworthy. And it turns out Daniel is a singer with a local group, which we'll get to, but he performs in a lot of churches in the community. And I want to show you what he posted on Facebook, because he did this after that policy went up. And he said he sent this to the Catholic Diocese of Cleveland. How very dare you? I have to read this out loud because he said it so well. Why has this venerable institution, in defiance of a majority of its congregation, decided to prohibit expression of LGBTQ plus identities within its walls? I've been teaching for 18 years, and I have saved lives because I was never ashamed to admit my identity as a gay man. I have given my students the hope that can only come from an authority figure who offers them the space to exist as their true self. Um, what is he? Your edict on this day of solemnity and reflection on September 11th almost feels like it was calculated to appeal to the throngs of citizens who are currently thinking about the political response to 9/11. Authoritarian rule, which the Catholic Church has always sought, requires an appeal to its followers that causes them fear. What great timing. Your antiquated playbook is killing children. It always has. I'm going to skip ahead here for a second. He says, I'm ashamed and frightened to show my face within your church walls. I will be in 3 of your most beautiful and welcoming churches in greater Cleveland over the next couple of weeks. I know your congregants oppose your message of hatred by a significant majority. I will be sure to express myself, and I will advocate for the needy despite your hateful demand for compliance. Your quasi-Christian actions are a threat to humanity. I ask you again, how very dare you? Love it. Great stuff right there. That's from Daniel. He sent that to the Catholic diocese because not because he's a Catholic who goes to these places, but because he's a human with a heart, right? And he performs in these churches, and he knows a lot of Catholics, and he knows this is a harmful policy, and he was pissed off about it. So, like, my heart goes out to him that he had to lose all this stuff. By the way, he performs with a group. I'm going to show you this right here. Let's see if I could pull it up. Yeah, here is the group that he performs with. It's called Choir Cleveland. And it looks kind of Catholic-y, but it's not. It's just like Renaissance music, old school, like several hundred years old, very complex music. They play stuff from the medieval Renaissance periods. It's a professional group. This is not a club. They pay their singers. They have artistic directors and all that stuff. And they perform in these churches. Kenworthy performed with them for 5 years. His musical resume is incredible. And the fact that he's in a same-sex marriage, it was never a problem because it's a secular nonprofit singing group. They get public funding. So why would any of it matter? And the thing, I spoke with Daniel about this stuff, and he said the thing that upset him more than anything is that one of the students he teaches was going to come see him perform at one of these concerts. But after the Catholic diocese released this list of rules, that student said to him, oh, so I guess I shouldn't go. And that kind of broke his heart. So the next day, after all of this, he posted again. And you know I have to share that with you as well. He posted one more time. And this is what he posted then. It's time for Pope Francis to fire the Bishop of Cleveland. It's time for all musical ensembles in Cleveland to boycott any congregations who practice the nonsensical hatred that the bishop has decided to enforce. No parish with blood on its hands deserves to host the concerts or even hear the incredible music that so many LGBTQ musicians contribute to. This goes on for a little while here, but he also points out that the mayor spoke out against this as well. So again, right there with you. My heart goes out to Daniel. All of that, totally with him. So I will admit, I let out a bit of a sigh when he said that because, like, Pope Francis agrees with what the diocese is doing. Like, the Catholic churches are not your allies on any of this. So I kind of rolled my eyes. But again, I appreciate that he's thinking about practicing Catholics who are much nicer. And he also pointed out in a separate post that has since been made private that he planned to push back against a lot of these policies himself by wearing pride gear to rehearsals when I'm in those buildings. He said that if anyone asked me to remove my rainbows and gay swag, they'll be sorry, which is facetious and he's being jokey, but you get the idea. It's a low stakes response to a high stakes policy. And he also told potential concert attendees, wear the most ostentatious pride swag you can get your hands on. So after all this, how did the Catholic diocese react? The right answer would have been they ignored everything. They did not do that. The Catholic diocese forwarded his message to Choir Cleveland, and Choir Cleveland proceeded to fire Daniel from his secular gig singing for them. And I know this because Daniel posted this a couple days later as someone who took a stand and got fired. No contract, no job, and no concert series is worth sacrificing your dignity. Stand up, be proud, and I know there is strength all around you. At this moment, I'm truly happy. I may have lost a singing job, but I will never lose my voice, which is a beautiful thing to say, but also I'm mad on his behalf. Like, why the hell was he fired for speaking out against bigotry? And why was the artistic leaders of a musical nonprofit upset with him? Like, you would think they know plenty of gay people themselves. You would think they're on his side. Why are they so mad? Why are they firing him? I asked them. I was like, why did you get rid of this dude right here? Because I can't imagine he did anything wrong. And it sounds like you should be mad at the church. Some version of that is what I emailed them. Let me read you what they sent to me. It was a very short email they sent back to me. They said, your understanding of the situation is incorrect. But they didn't elaborate. And I'm just going to go out here and say, no, it wasn't. My understanding was pretty spot on because I don't think I got anything wrong here. I told you everything they said. Then Choir Cleveland, just like a day or two later, they posted a new message because it turns out after they fired Daniel, someone else walked out and said, well, I'm quitting. And then they posted this. We regret to announce that Choir Cleveland has canceled its final concert series, which was going to take place in a church. While Choir Cleveland does not agree with or support this policy, there you go, the decision to cancel the concert series was made solely to protect the safety and well-being of our singers, concert attendees, and hosting churches in the context of ongoing social media activity encouraging disruption of the concerts as a means of protesting the policy. Just to be clear, the disruptions they're talking about, I think, are Daniel telling people wear rainbow swag when you come to watch. Why would a singer tell people to come to his concerts and then disrupt his concerts that he and his friends have worked so hard to put on? I've never heard an actor say, yeah, I'm mad at something that's outside of my control, so come to my show and ruin it in protest. No one does that. That doesn't make any sense. I will say I went to this post right now to see if it was still up there. And that very post with the same link has been changed. Choir Cleveland is now saying the concerts are back on, I guess, somehow. I don't know what that's about, but like, fine. I'm fine with them having the concerts, but like, if you're against the policies of the church, then be more against the policies. Speak out against it. I don't know what you're doing. The only people who should be worried about their safety are the LGBTQ people that the church's policies discriminate against. I don't know. There is a theory, I don't know if this is true, that one reason they thought they had to cancel the concerts is because if you have a small ensemble of professional singers and you lose at least two of them, you may not be able to sing all the parts and it may not sound as well. And I wonder if that was the reason they canceled, not because they were worried about disruption, but because they were trying to save face from the fact that, oh no, our people are quitting and we can't hold a concert anymore. If any of you are wondering, I did speak to Daniel, check in how he's doing. He said he's going to be fine. He's a lifelong musician and he's never relied on concerts for his income. But as a performer, that was the way he kind of unleashed that side of him. So it's kind of disappointing that he doesn't have that outlet to perform. He wasn't expecting to get fired as a result of all this. I hope he gets it back. I hope he wants to go back, or I hope he finds another outlet. But just an upsetting thing to have happen. If there's any other comments here, feel free to jump in right now. While I take a quick drink, I swear I will wrap this up in 10 minutes and I'll speed through it. And if there are no other questions, I will continue going. Really quick update for you with the story here. This is out of Louisiana. Last year, let me show you, not that. I will show you this. Here you go. Last year, there was this horrific story about a guy named John Raymond, um, who's the head of a school called Lakeside Christian School. This is from April of 2022. And he was arrested because he brought 3 children into his office to reprimand them for talking in class. And then he literally taped their mouths shut after wrapping the tape around their heads. According to other administrators, the kids were like that for 45 minutes. And the administrators had to cut the tape off. That's how disturbing this was. The students couldn't breathe properly. They said having the tape removed was really painful. And this guy was charged with 3 counts of cruelty to juveniles, and he went to jail. He also tried to defend himself, saying, like, I gave the kids a choice between the type of tape. He said they were never in physical pain. Their breathing wasn't impaired. The students were never treated with cruelty and all that. It turns out, couple months after all this, he was arrested again. Guess why? You guessed it, child cruelty again. This time, the allegation said he was holding a 4-year-old boy upside down by his ankles and whipping his buttocks, according to the allegations. And he covered that same child's mouth and nose to stop a tantrum. And the kid went limp, according to witnesses. Kid was unable to stand after all that. So, why am I bringing this up? It's not because this guy is running a Christian school. I will get to that part in a second. But one interesting side note about this guy is John Raymond is also famous for another reason. And it's because several years ago, like close to 15 odd years ago, he appeared on Survivor. He was on Survivor Thailand, which I believe was the 5th season. And as a longtime fan of the show, I can tell you it's the worst season out of all 44 that have ever existed. Not only was it a bad season, John Raymond over here was the first dude kicked off the island in the worst season ever. So he's like the worst guy in a whole cast full of people you don't really like. So that's interesting as well. So anyway, this guy, all the arrests that happened after the fact, and now he has decided to run for office. He is running for office. He actually announced this earlier this year. He has a whole history of working with Republican groups. He serves as an elected official for the St. Tammany Republican Parish Executive Committee. He said all the allegations against him were false. He was a victim of cancel culture. No one asked him to resign. This guy also served as the Louisiana Republican Party State Central Committee member. He was on that. They didn't punish him either because they like kids getting hurt. So after all this, with 4 counts of child abuse, he decided to run for the state house. He announced that back in May. He said, I feel it's important people who believe in conservative Christian principles hold positions to create laws to direct our state properly. I feel compelled to do this. He also said he wants to, what's his tagline? His tagline, he's running for office because our children are our greatest treasure. That's literally on his campaign website. The reason I bring all this up now is because I want you to see this headline right here. Give me a second to get this up here. There we go. Louisiana Republican Party endorses the candidate charged with criminal cruelty to children. The Republican Party just endorsed John Raymond officially this week. They're backing this guy no matter what charges he has against him. Now you might think, okay, well, there's only maybe a Democrat in the race, maybe not. So they're not going to back the Democrat. But surely there is no other Republican in the race, and that's why they're endorsing this guy. Nope, there is another Republican in the race, and that guy is friggin' furious right now. The other Republican in the race says, as a lifelong Republican, it's an embarrassment. I can't express how disappointed I am that the Louisiana Republican Party has chosen to endorse a candidate with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 criminal charges of cruelty to children, which is hilarious because if you know anything about the Republican Party, they love cruelty against children. They love guns in schools. They don't want to support child poverty, things that can resolve it. Like, there are plenty of reasons to be embarrassed by the Republican Party. This is just the latest one. But the fact that that guy lost an endorsement to the guy with 4 counts of child cruelty, like that tells you what they're working with the Republican Party in that area. So that's the thing that's happening. That guy might be in public office very soon. I'm going to give you one last happy story. This will be fast. If you've ever heard of this guy right here, let me show you the picture if I could pull it up here. I haven't. I'll figure this out. I'll learn how to do this in time. Greg Casar. He is a congressman from Texas. He just got elected in 2022. He's a Democrat from Texas. He just joined the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, which is the only lobbying group in Washington. Not a lobbying group, I should say. It's the only caucus in Congress for representing people who are atheists, who defend church-state separation. They defend reason-based policies. There are 18 members of that caucus right now. Jared Huffman, a representative from California, he's the founder of the caucus, and he has the attendance list. So the caucus members are now up to 18. Greg Casar is the latest one. That's very exciting news. It didn't make any news. It's not really headline news. That guy is progressive, so it's not that surprising. He's the sort of guy who waged a hunger strike in defense of people who couldn't get water because policies were passed by Republicans to do stuff to not give people water when they were thirsty. Very good progressive dude. All of those people, by the way, all 18 members, they're all Democrats. Surprise. But I thought that was good news. And the last thing I wanted to show you today, I'll wrap it. I'll leave it at this if there are no other questions. And if there are, feel free to leave them here right now. Does Daniel have a GoFundMe or a Venmo? This is the singer, Daniel, I was talking about a second ago. At the moment, the answer is no. I don't think he has anything because he made it very clear to me. He's not looking for a handout here and he's not struggling. He has other jobs. This is more of a passion project that he lost as opposed to a living that he couldn't do. So I think he'll be okay, but it's frustrating. And here's a thing I wanted to show you. This is from Peter Boghossian. He is the author of a couple books that promoted atheism back in the day, and now he's like a right-wing loon. Here's a question he just posed on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it now. What percentage of children would you be okay with teachers transitioning per year if it meant that overall children would be literate in English? So the question he's asking is if we could raise child literacy, how many kids would it be okay if teachers turned them trans? What's the trade-off? He actually thinks teachers turn kids trans. That's what he does. And then he adds as a follow-up, how many more children being literate are you willing to trade for one trans child? Forget the stupid hypothetical that is happening here. He actually thinks teachers turn you trans. I taught math for 7 years in a public school. I can't get them to do homework. You think I'm going to get them to change their gender? I couldn't do that if I wanted to, and no teacher I know wants to do that because who the hell cares? But this is how much of a rabbit hole these old school new atheists are in, that he thinks teachers are literally grooming their children and changing their gender and convincing them to do that sort of thing. That's how dumb he is these days. And this, I mean, he says a lot of dumb things, but I thought this was so short and sweet, and it encompasses how crazy he's become. I just wanted you to see that because that's why I don't recommend his books to anyone ever again. He's insane. And on that note, there's also this lady who you all love, the transformed wife. Let's read this one together, shall we? No fault divorce means no motivation to stay married. A man can work hard to support his family and be faithful, and yet, if his wife commits adultery and leaves, he loses half of what he owns and makes. There is no incentive to stay married for life. It's destroyed the institution of marriage. So what she's saying, and somehow this is less crazy to me than what Boghossian just said, because we allow people to get divorced in this country for no reason, or at least in many states for no reason, No one has to stay. There's no reason you have to stay married anymore. Like, it's destroyed marriage, which means if she thinks because people have the option of divorce, they don't want to stay married. To which I would just say, if the existence of divorce is the only thing keeping you married, maybe there's a problem with your marriage. Because I'm pretty sure people who want to stay married, they're not really threatened by the existence of no-fault divorce. I'm trying to understand that logic. And then, of course, she's saying the wife is the one who's going to commit adultery and leave. And then how dare she take half of his stuff? Notice she doesn't say it the other way around, because that happens also quite a bit. What is the comment we have there while I pull up one last tweet, and then I swear to God we are done. Christian logic. Trans kids are mutilating themselves, and also Christians. Yes. So when's the next circumcision? You know what I always find interesting about those people? They're always like, no, children should not be allowed. If they're trans, they should not be allowed to have any gender affirming surgeries, because that would be a horrible thing. We can't allow them to do that, even though very few kids have surgeries at that age. And yet there are plenty of high school girls who have breast implants when they're in high school before they turn 18. That's a legal thing. They do that. And yet I don't see the same outrage about them mutilating their bodies to enhance what God gave them. That doesn't seem to come up in those Christian rights circles. One more for you from our friend, the transformed wife over here. This one made me laugh a lot. We didn't vaccinate our children, nor did we get the COVID vaccine. We don't have an electric car or solar panels. We eat steak, eggs, and butter. We don't trust the government, nor do we trust most of doctors' advice to stay healthy. We also don't live in fear. Read Psalm 37, which whenever she has a tombstone, I want this tweet plastered on there. I don't get the bragging about we don't vaccinate about anything, apparently. Like polio, who cares? The MMR, who cares? Like, these people just, vaccines are bad. I don't know why. They just think they're all evil. They went from COVID vaccine is bad for reasons that are dumb to all vaccines are bad, and now measles are back everywhere. Like, please, when they're available near you, go get your flu shot, go get your COVID booster, whatever you need to get. But then at the end, nor do we trust most of doctors' advice to stay healthy. Like, I get why you might not want to trust the government. There's reasons for that, but I don't trust doctors' advice. Why? This lady has a tumor in her head, I believe. Like, she has to deal with doctors. You know why I trust doctors? Because they study the stuff I'm going to them to see. Whatever I'm seeing them about, they're supposed to know. I have to put my trust in them because they know better than me. And if they say something and I'm like, oh, I don't like that, whatever, I still should listen to them because they're the experts. I don't know everything about every subject, but I hopefully can trust people who have a vested interest and they study this stuff every day and they're obsessed about it. Doesn't mean you trust all of them. It means if everyone seems to think, yeah, this person knows what they're talking about, they develop a reputation. You can trust them. To just say, no, we don't trust most doctors' advice to stay healthy. What do you think they're doing? That there's some conspiracy to hurt you? They don't get paid for you to be sick. They will help you. Like, they're not getting paid to hurt you. There's plenty to criticize about the way doctors' offices are run and the way healthcare works in this country and pharmaceutical companies and all that. And I'm right there with you. But if you think most doctors are out there not to help you and they're giving you bad advice, like, you're going to be screwed and your kids are going to be screwed real soon. Anyway, how's that for angry tweets this week? The ignorant love to brag about their willful rejection of intelligence. Man, no one has more confidence than ignorant people. And you know what? They all run for office because they think they're very qualified. And then all the smart people I know are like, I don't think I'm really the perfect candidate for this job. Maybe I shouldn't run. I don't study this all the time. Well, the idiot over there thinks they know everything and they're running as a Republican. So, like, maybe you should think about running for city council or school board or something. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. If there are questions here, Hammond, will you be doing more Sunday Bible readings? The answer is yes. And let me tell you what I'm going to do. I have one in the queue right now that I'll post eventually. That's just a one-off chapter. And I am working on doing an entire book. What I'm going to try to do is get as much of the series ready as I can so I don't have to worry about completing it every week. And then I'm debating how much can I make it bigger than the Bible series I did in the past, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. Can I make it more expansive? Can I add more intellectual stuff to it from more sources? That will take time. I may end up doing a Kickstarter or something for that, and I'm aiming to do that closer to the winter. But I am starting to do the groundwork to get it ready. So I will come back. Hema, when's the next meetup? I just found out I'm flying to Chicago next week. Sweet. So 2 things. I am going to Denver next Saturday. That information is on Facebook. It's with the Secular Hub in Denver. I'll be there next week. And then in Chicago, if you listen to the podcast, we are meeting at a place called Solemn Oath Brewery. That's in the western suburbs of Chicago on October 7th. That's a meetup I'm doing with my co-host Jessica for the podcast, and hopefully with podcast listeners as well. If you can make it, those are both the Denver thing. You have to get tickets. The Chicago thing is that's free of charge. You can bring your kids. You can bring pets, I am told, to the brewery as well. Any other questions here? More importantly, would there be a new shirt with the readings? I may change my clothes for the next batch of readings because I washed the old shirt and now I don't think I can wear it anymore. It's too old. What's the thing in Denver? If you search, just Google Denver Secular Hub, HUB, and you will find their website. You will find the Facebook group. You'll find all the information. I don't know exactly the name of the location, but come on down for it. It'll be great. Thank you. Thank you for the commentary. Thank you for that comment. I appreciate it. While we're wrapping this up, thank you to Den for helping out with all the moderation and all of this stuff. If anyone wants to support this channel, you can go here to support patreon.com/Hemant. I'll post clips of this during the week. And next week, if I do this live stream again, it might be a day early because I'm going to Denver next week. So I won't be around my normal time. And with that, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you all for staying around way too late tonight. And have a wonderful weekend. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.